Wade, you built a $36 million company, made the Inc. 5000 6 years in a row, then walked away. Was that a clean exit, or were you escaping something?
Well, I was absolutely escaping. It was a clean exit financially, but it wasn't a clean exit emotionally. It was not a clean personal exit. I never had a panic attack until that moment. Laying on the floor, I'm like, it feels like an elephant is on my chest. But that'll happen, of course.
In 2008, you cut your own salary to zero to keep them. But why didn't you just lay people off like everyone else at the time?
We looked at it and just said, we're going to need all these people. Was that really the right thing? And sometimes I actually kind of question it, to be candid. And there's only a few unicorns, and most entrepreneurs fall into the two buckets I already talked about. And they need to pick their lane and stop trying to come up with the next innovation. At the end of the day, go for it. Don't not have a dream. It's not just as easy as saying it. It's not just as easy as doing it.
Wade, you built a $36 million company, made the Inc. 5000 6 years in a row, then walked away. Was that a clean exit, or were you escaping something?
Well, I was absolutely escaping. It was a clean exit financially, but it wasn't a clean exit emotionally or psychologically. So it was a clean exit outside of that. Everything legally and financially was clean, but it was not a clean personal exit.
And if you could just elaborate on that, in what sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we built this business over about 15 years, and it was a partnership. We had several people in the business that had equity in the U.S. and the state of Michigan. You have minority rights as business owners. So whether you own 1% or 50% of a business, you have rights. And so even someone that's majority can't just do what they want to do. And it became contentious between the different owners in the business. And so at one point I had just made the statement that I wanted out, and that did not make the other partners, I was the CEO and founder, it didn't make them very happy, especially since I was a significant part of the business as an influencer and a visionary and all that. And so that created about 2 years of tension, and they finally decided that, you know what, they would buy me out, which they did, and they did the right thing. And it was a very clean financial and legal exit. But the way, when you end any type of relationship or partnership like that, it's very difficult. Good news is the bulk of those partners and I have become friends again over time. That was about 8 years ago. And there's been, I would say, healing, if that's the word I can use, has happened since then. Not with all of them, but it was definitely a difficult time in my life. And it was not a fun thing. And in my book, I think it's the 3rd chapter, I actually wrote about how all partnerships die, whether it's literally through death. I mean, you don't live forever, or it's through, like mine died, was just, was contention and issues and challenges and disputes and differences of opinion and direction and all that. All partnerships die. The sad thing too is that that business unfortunately did get sold quite a few years after I was there. And none of the partners really achieved much after I left. And I don't think that was me. That's not to say that I was the right person or was doing the right thing. In fact, I had seen that I couldn't get the business any bigger. I got to a certain point and I was not the right person. I was open about that. Still have been, always have been about that. And my partners eventually realized the same thing, but they did not exit fast enough. So they did sell, but they did not get out clean financially. And so I would say, suffered a little bit, unfortunately. And that's another thing you can learn as an entrepreneur is, there's a lot of glamour and a lot of positive things about being an entrepreneur. I tell everybody to do it. Everybody should be a business owner at some level. There's also some complexities and challenges. It's just like getting married. It's a beautiful thing, but there's complexities and challenges that you have to accept and overcome. Anyway, so unfortunately for them, they did not get out clean, and I don't revel in that. 7 years ago, I might have been happy to know that, but now today, after all the healing and time has passed, I'm a little less upset about that. A little more disappointed for them, to be candid.
Yeah, that's really humble of you, and I know that you're a spiritual man as well. You're a family man, and that also plays a big part in the way you see things, and that definitely comes across. Me and also many other people have been in that situation. When you're part of a business, it's growing, it's going great, and then you can have some disagreements. You don't want to kill the other people, or they're not your enemy, but you're disappointed because it's your baby, right? You're working on it, you're building it, and there's emotional ties there. What's one moment in your founder journey that nearly broke you? Because in 2008 you did have 40 employees, right? And the economy crashed. You cut your own salary to zero to keep them. But why didn't you just lay people off like everyone else at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just in case someone else watches this, we didn't cut to zero. We did cut our salaries, but not to zero. Just to make sure, in case anybody sees this and knows that fact. It's unlikely, but just in case, correct that fact. But we did cut quite a bit. I don't know if it was the right decision. I still stand behind it, and I do waffle times. I think it's an A or B, and you can pick either door. But at the time in 2008, we looked at the crashing economy, and we knew it was going to rebound for us. The automotive industry in the U.S., you could say, never really rebounded. They've done okay, but they never really rebounded to what they were in the past. And some other industries in the U.S. never rebounded. But we are in the tech industry and cybersecurity specifically. We knew there'd be a rebound, and we had really good talent. Arguably now looking back, we could have taken the opportunity to upscale our talent, meaning let go some of the poor talent. But we looked at it and just said, we're going to need all these people. And we also were taking the approach of and I'm going to use air quotes here, we wanted to do the right thing. Now, again, as in my 50s now, not my 30s anymore, that was 20 some years ago, or nearly 20 years ago. In my 50s now, I look at that and go, was that really the right thing? And we could have a healthy debate here about that. And sometimes I actually kind of question it, to be candid. But at the time, it felt right to keep everybody employed, keep everybody on board. So yeah, everybody took salary cuts, and the ownership took more. Obviously, we did do distributions. We did, we made a lot of changes, and we got serious about the business. I wouldn't say we weren't serious before, but it was a wake-up call, which is the title of my book. It was a wake-up call in that moment. And so, yeah, we did all that, and that was hard. I mean, a few people got nasty with me. I remember thinking, one guy called me, and he's really upset. He's like, well, I deserve a raise, not a cut. I'm like, we're saving people's jobs here. Like, I think you're missing the bigger picture. Although now looking back, he was a top performer, and he was looking at some of the people in the business I could have just cut and not cut his salary, right? So he's going, wait a second, why would you keep some of these underperforming people? So again, this is all like in the US, do you vote Democrat, Republican? Some of it comes down to your worldview, how you feel in the moment, what you see in politics. And I think in that moment was the same thing. I knew other people who did cut bottom performing people and did just as well as I did and did it differently. So I'm careful not to say I did it right any longer. One time I was quite braggadocious about that, but with more time and wisdom and maturity, I can see that I think both doors are good options. You have to pick what's right for you. And in the moment, it was right. And we did rebound. And then those people were very loyal. In Canada, and actually, we did end up in 2014, 6 years later, we did go through a round of cuts. We were about 100 people. We cut back to 80. And it was hard for the people that had stuck it out all that time. There were some that were very, very upset at me because like, well, you didn't do it before. Why are you doing it now? Because it wasn't an economic issue at the time. It was just we had to slow down. We lost some major contracts. So it seemed like I was being a little bit intellectually dishonest, or I wasn't living my morals. But again, different times, different viewpoint, a lot of different things that happen. And so, there's like one individual who might even watch this podcast because he seems to follow everything I do, but he's still upset at me. And every once in a while through grapevine, I'll hear, that he's do very well. But it leads me to another point, and I'm going on a little bit here, but I think this is an important point to make for anybody who's watching this from a business or entrepreneurship standpoint. And I've said this many times, and I think I even wrote about it in my book, is that I had a real time. I struggled early in my career letting people go, firing them or laying them off. And I did it, of course. You have to in business. If you're not willing to fire somebody, you really shouldn't be a business owner or be in a leadership position because you have to do it at times. And I say that to say this next point, the reason why you have to do it is not just the right thing for the business. In many cases, if not all, it's the right thing for the person. Let me give you an example. The first 100 people I let go, most were fired. I felt guilty about it. So I made a pact to myself. I would kind of track and watch their careers as much as I could. They weren't going to talk to me anymore because I fired them. But through LinkedIn or through friends, I kind of keep track of it. And with the exception of one person, they were all doing better money. They seemed happier. They would tell their friends they had better jobs. They're happy not to work for me anymore. So in a sense, when you let someone go, you're obviously doing it for your organization, but in many cases, you're doing it for them as well. Because 99 out of 100 cases, they did better. And I used to say 9 out of 100, but I can say 100 now because one of those individuals I used to count as the one, I caught up with him recently. And while he's not doing better from a pay standpoint, he's definitely doing better. He's happier. He got into a career he enjoys more. He's got more fulfillment. He ended up having a kid. He's happily married. Things he thought he'd never get. And a lot of that came from that change. And so, and he says nice things about me. So the one that I would think would say negative things about me, even that one is pretty happy. So out of the first 100 people I've let go in my career, I can report back 100 are happy. And then I recently was doing a stint as a hired gun as a CEO, now as an entrepreneur. And I was working in an organization, and I was doing a turnaround. And this was like 2 years ago. We had to let a lot of people go. And again, many were very upset at me. I did the same thing there because I wanted to see that still proved out. And every single person got better jobs, more pay, were happier. Not with me. They still were upset at me, would say nasty things. By every measurable thing, everybody told me that talked to them, it's better for them. So it doesn't always work out that way. And every once in a while, I hear a really sad case where someone will take their life or turn to alcohol or something of that nature. That does happen. But in most cases, my experience has been everybody's better off. And when you don't do it, you sit there thinking you're doing the right thing by keeping someone on board, trying to help them in a job they're not happy and are doing a good job at, and you're not. And I know in other parts of the world, it's very hard to let people go, specifically in the UK. But, unfortunately in America, we can still do that. So I recommend anybody here, you think about that. But back to the layoffs in 2008, that was a seminal moment for me. It was hard. It was something I learned from, and I still rely on the learnings there to make decisions today.
No, definitely. I mean, you can have one side being making decisions based on value, the other side based on fear at the same time, right? Because 2008 wasn't a small thing. And, it's actually really honorable of you to track their careers, because usually that's the end of it. And you could be doing them a favor. Most of the time you are, right? You're doing the business a favor, which is your first priority. And you're doing them a favor to say, look, you're underperforming. We've given you a chance. We've got these KPIs in place. You're not hitting them. That's it. There's nothing else to speak about, right? Go out, find something else, or upskill, or do what you have to do to put yourself in a better place, right?
But yeah, well, you nailed it. Like this, you need to go upscale you. And if you don't give them an opportunity to do that, you're limiting their potential. And I've been fired more than once, and I was fired early on in my career. And then I was, again, my partners bought me out, but that's being fired. At the end of the day, you can paint that however you want. That's your partners getting together and going, the only way to fire you is to buy out your shares and ask you to leave. So we're buying your shares and asking you to leave. And that's exactly what they did. There's no two ways about it. And I upscaled my talents, and I've arguably made more money and had more success since that time. And I'm in the middle of a startup right now, which I think is going to be pretty successful. I got really good feelings about it. But I wouldn't be able to have as much success in this startup if that hadn't happened. So,
and what's the name of your book for the people that are watching?
So I read a couple books, but the one that's kind of the bestseller, the one I'd promote the most, is called Wake Up Call. It's obviously available on Amazon. If you just do Wyant Wake Up Call, you'll find it easily. It wasn't a mistake, all those W's, so that's intentional, obviously. But it's got 64 stories, and they're short, so don't worry, it's not 64 long chapters. It's 64 very short chapters, 3 or 4 pages, about mistakes I made. And the book was born out of 2017 when I exited my business, and I sat down and I wrote down all the mistakes I believed I made, because you don't learn from your successes, you do learn from your mistakes. I really do believe that. And I wrote them down. One was I let my CFO hire my head of HR. And I had a great CFO, incredible guy, did an amazing work, but he should have never hired the HR person. I forego that responsibility because, candidly, I was being lazy. I was an entrepreneur. I was running fast. And that was a huge mistake. Jack Welch, who ran GE for all those years, he talked about how important the HR hire is and how the HR person should report to the CEO. And I didn't. I knew it. I read Jack Welch's book. I even knew it in the moment, and I didn't do it. And so there's just like one of the many mistakes that I made. So I wrote about 100 different mistakes, and then I wrote blogs on almost all of them, and then I distilled them down to my favorite 64. Looking back now, it probably could be 50 chapters pretty easily, because there's a few I could just, like, one's on whiteboarding, I could throw that one out. So there's a few chapters. If you read the book, I would encourage you to skip. If you don't like it, just skip that chapter. But there's quite a few in there that I've had people tell me, like, yeah, this is like exactly what I needed to hear. In fact, one on the partnership one person, I've actually more than one person, but one person specifically, after they read that, they went and bought their partner out. And they're like, if I hadn't read that, I would have never bought my partner out. It was the best thing I've ever done. So, you learn from my mistakes. If you can learn from that, if you learn from other people's mistakes, you're going to go a long ways.
No, definitely. And you're speaking to that person at that particular moment in their life as well. And what was the mental toll? I mean, you seem really open and direct and easy to speak to about these things. I mean, what was the mental toll on yourself and even by extension, your family while you were going through all of this?
Yeah, it was a lot. So a couple of things. The first off, I never had a panic attack until that moment. I can remember one during the process. When you have this thing happen, it doesn't happen in a day, right? It takes several, in my case, it was several weeks. Some people it takes months or years to exit their business in this type of situation. And even if it's a good exit and you're excited about it, you'll still go through a lot of the same emotions. And I tell people this all the time, is that when you go through any kind of exit in your business, the emotions are very similar and you need to be ready for them. So for example, I remember one day, this was in late October. It was October 13th. It was Friday the 13th in October. Can you believe that? So, Friday the 13th is a big day. And then it was October. That was the day my partners pushed me. I was coming back from an event in Detroit. So I'm in Michigan. I was coming back from an event in Detroit. Drove back that morning. So got super early from the hotel. Drove back for a team meeting. And they're like, before the team meeting, I was at my desk as a CEO doing a little bit of work. And one of the partners is like, hey, can we meet with you in Bob's office? Bob was one of the other major partners in the business. Walked down to his office and they had HR in there. I'm like, oh, I guess this is the moment, huh? And I knew something was afoot. This is coming. And they said, well, we don't want you to be CEO anymore. We want you to leave today. I'm like, well, that's all well and good, but what's your plan? And so the first mental toll was, and I've told my partners this is not a secret. I don't hold a grudge and I'm not bitter about this. I am still disappointed in how they handled that because me as a human, they didn't have a plan. They just knew they wanted me out and they had the option to buy me out. We all had the option. So they all got together and did it. But then I'm like, okay, so what's the plan? We'll get back to you. It's like, well, that's not fair. Like you can't make a decision to do something, but then not have a plan. And so a couple of days later in October, I had a panic attack because I didn't know exactly what was happening. I mean, contractually, they had to buy me out. Contractually, they had to do the right thing. It's all on paper, but it's only as good as your willingness to fight that paper and go to court. Now, again, they ended up doing the right thing. They did everything quickly. In retrospect, they did things very quickly. They did the right thing. I don't have any issues there at all. But in the moment, hours can seem like days and days can seem like weeks. And so I did have a panic attack. And I remember laying on the floor. I'm like, it feels like an elephant is on my chest right now. And my spouse at the time, she's not my ex, but my spouse at the time, she was talking me through. She said, I think you're having a panic attack. And I'm like, that's impossible. I can't have a panic attack. And I was having a panic attack. And so, that took a toll on me that way. It took a toll. It took me a little bit of time to rebound with my confidence and whatnot, but that'll happen, of course. I'd say, though, my family definitely suffered. Now, this is by my own hand. It wasn't their fault that I went through this. I built a business. I chose to do that. I had problems with my partners. I was a part of that. It wasn't just them. It was me as well. No, they were part of it, but it was us together. So my family didn't choose any of this. But after the fact, when you have teenager kids, and I had teenagers at the time, they'll use any fact about your life to then, needle you when they're rebelling or they're getting into trouble. And so, that definitely had an impact on me over time. And then, look, I'm not married to that person anymore. There's a lot of reasons for that. This definitely did help. And now, is this the reason? No, not at all. We made our own bed and we had our own challenges, which you'll find that in entrepreneurship all the time. There's many entrepreneurs do not maintain a single marriage. And that, I don't like that. I think you should do everything you can to not get in that situation. But it's just the reality of the stress and the decisions that you make. There's great opportunity. There's also great sacrifice that comes along with it. And while I would not change my journey, and I would encourage everybody to go down the same journey, I'd also encourage any young entrepreneur who's watching this to be a little more mindful of that. And I think you see that with what we call millennials or Generation Z, right? Those generations are being much more mindful about mental wellness and the challenges that are around them. Whereas Generation X and the boomers before me, we just we just drove hard at the problem, and we didn't really solve any of those challenges as we pushed forward with entrepreneurship in the business. And I'm not blaming the generation. I made all my own decisions, so that's on me. I will say at the same time, it was a culture, a culture that didn't help me. So I bought into and I participated in a culture that I would change. So as I'm in new relationships now. I have new friendships now, and I've done a lot of work on myself from a mental standpoint and a psychological standpoint. And I can tell you, my startups I'm in now, I'm being a lot more smart about how do I show up outside of the business and be mindful. Just little things like when I'm with people, I'm not on my phone doing business. It can wait. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who buy into this, this idea that you got to be always hustling and go, go, go. Well, you can, and I did, but most people don't maintain relationships that way. You have to set that thing down. You got to be present, or you'll have one thing but not the other. You can have both, but you have to make really hard decisions. So that's what I'm doing now. But it was a toll. It was a huge toll, and I wouldn't change it, not at all. I'd do it all over again. And I'd probably do exactly the same way, but I do recognize how it could have been different.
You obviously learn from your mistakes, right? And hence it sparred you. Well, it was the spark that allowed you to write your book or made you write your book. But going back to the point where you were lying on the floor or wherever having a panic attack to where you are now, you said you've implemented a lot of other things. And yes, your generation, my generation, we grew up without phones. So we do have those communication skills. We are able to put it down, and the new generation is suffering with that. However, times have changed as well, right? And you being, it's good because you can look inwards, you can admit your mistakes, and you can find a way to patch that or learn from that, right? What are some of the things, like 3 things that you've implemented which help you do that today? Mindfulness is one of them. Maybe if you could break that down so people can actually understand the process and where it's led to.
Yeah, I would say, I read the book Essentialism. I don't remember the author's name, but I think he was he was at Twitter or someplace. Anyways, but Essentialism, if you just look for that book, you'll find the author pretty quickly. And he talks about, saying no more, and which is easy to say, hard to do, and focusing on the essential things in your life. And I definitely practice that every day. I do a lot more meditation now. I come from a Christian background, but I would consider myself more of a Christian Buddhist. I think there's a lot of wisdom in Buddhism. There's a lot of wisdom in meditating. People can call that prayer if they want, whatever you want to call it. But I think there's something said for that quiet stillness. And then another thing that I implemented towards the end of that one business I sold. Now I've been in several businesses since then, but that business that was the bulk of my career, bulk of my entrepreneurship journey. And one thing I implemented at the tail end of that was fitness, and I've become even more regimented. Hence what I'm wearing right now. I mean, I came from a 2-hour workout. I don't miss any day. Every day I practice physical fitness every single day, no matter what. Whether I'm traveling, I can fly for 14 hours, and I'm still gonna go. And I'm going to get a workout in. Just did that to Africa and back. So no days off, 0. There's just no reasons. You don't take days off from anything else. I don't take days off from eating or drinking water. Why would I take it off from that? So no days off. Now there are days I might go a little lighter, but nope, no days off. So that is one area that I really focus in on. And I think that, I don't know if I'm at 3 now, but the other one is, I think, supplements. I'm not into like wacky supplements, but I am into having a very balanced lifestyle. And I tell most entrepreneurs, if you have any means at all, if you've made any kind of money, you should be looking at concierge medicine, and you should be looking at, especially in the US, where you have access to that, and you should be looking at, you should have blood work done. You should know where you're at. It's incredible how much imbalances in your body can throw you off in a lot of different ways. And I think the final thing, this is 4th or 5th, but I think, especially in the U.S., and I can't speak to the rest of the world, but in the U.S., one of the things that drives business is social drinking and alcohol. You see it everywhere in business. And, I definitely participate in that. And I cut back over the years of how much I participated, and now I'm at 0, right? I don't consume any alcohol at all. And I have no problem with it. I don't have a moral or physical profit. I mean, I have lots of friends. I was just out the other night with friends that were, drinking, doing shots a whole bit, and they had a great time. But I just can tell you, for me, it's just far better to be sober all the time, not just most of the time. And do I miss some of it? Sure, absolutely. It's an antidepressant, of course. There's some things that I miss about it, but I would say if you can, as an entrepreneur, if you can make that decision and switch that off, which most don't, most do consume either small to large volumes of alcohol, but that makes a huge, huge difference. Again, I miss it at times. There's no doubt about that, but it makes a huge difference, and I'm glad I made the decision to not consume it any longer.
No, definitely. And I think this new generation is drinking less as well, right?
Good.
And there's,
I don't know, maybe.
yes.
Good.
And there is this movement of high performing entrepreneurs or people who just want to better themselves day by day. And, you take no days off on the gym. Now that is what got you to that mentality? Because you must have had that in you all along, right? It's just a seed which has grown stronger and stronger and stronger. And what is it that you would say in short that got you to that place? Like, what was the catalyst?
Yeah, we think we talked through this. I enjoyed fitness a lot as a younger person, until I had kids. And then in my 20s, when I had kids and got busy with business, it just seemed like something extra, and I wasn't sure how much it benefited me. So I stopped. So for many years, 20 years, very little fitness, on and off, of course, starts and stops. But there was a point, it was a midlife crisis for sure. It was right before I turned 40. So this is 10 years ago. My kids were headed out trick-or-treating for Halloween here in the US. And I didn't want to go. I was at home kind of just sitting there a little depressed, and something clicked. I can't tell you what it was. Something clicked. I made a decision. And so then I started educating myself. And I think that was one of the biggest things is I got started exercising. So don't wait, don't educate yourself first. But as I did that, I educated myself. So there's some famous podcasters right now. They're political podcasters, but it's the Hodge twins. And it's funny, they're big political podcasters now, but I watched the Hodge twins. Yeah, fitness 12 years ago, they weren't even that conservative. They were actually kind of liberal. And they had a nasty podcast too. They were always talking about sex, and I probably don't want to talk about what they were talking about on this podcast, but you go back to their old stuff, it was quite filthy, but they were real about fitness. I mean, they didn't cut it. They just this is what really works. They weren't trying to sell anything. And so I would work out and watch that. Then I watched this other guy called Snoopy, and he was really good. Just cut the bullshit. This is what you need to know about fitness. And as I started watching these guys and learning, and then reading, of course, and the whole bit, I would do that while I worked out. And so that started developing more and more. And then about 5 years ago or 4 years ago, someone encouraged me to check out the Hard 90, I think it's called. I can't remember. It's a book that was written about doing 90 days where you exercise every single day and you exercise twice a day. You don't drink, you do all these things. And again, I don't remember the guy's name, but if you Google it, you'll find it pretty quickly. It's called Hard 90. But anyways, I read the book or read portions of the book and followed down there's some wisdom to just go every day. And so I did that, and I actually enjoyed it better because then I just knew every day I was doing it no matter what. And so I never stopped, and I don't regret that at all. So it was definitely an evolution, but if anybody who's in the situation where maybe you're heavier than you want to be, you don't feel fit, you don't feel healthy, I mean, the two things I'd say is, number one, just get started. Right now, once this podcast is done, go do push-ups. Once this podcast is done, go walk. You don't have to run, or go do something that gets you going. And then as you're doing that, listen to a fitness podcast or something. And I'm telling you, you just do that a couple days in a row, and before you know it, you'll be off to the races. And if you're not, then you might want to think about what's inside you, because it's hard not to then get motivated to do something.
Definitely. And I guess people it was Anthony Robbins that said, emotion creates motion, right? So you get to be emotionally fed up. And you just mentioned it in Enough, Never Again, right?
Yeah.
You have to be fed up with yourself to that point to actually.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I was going to say is, to that point, I will also say, nobody's perfect. People fall back into bad habits. So for example, when I was going through some of my personal challenges in my marriage with my kids, there was a short period of time, about 1 year, where I fell back into heavy drinking and very little exercise. And so if you go into social media, you can find some older videos of me of like 2 years ago where I was about 30 pounds heavier. I didn't return to the unfit person I was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, where I couldn't run a mile. I couldn't do pull-ups. I could still do 10 pull-ups. I could still bench, 225. I mean, I could still do those things, but I was a heavy person. I was carrying a lot of fat, a lot of excess fat that I didn't need. And once I got past, I had a wake up call again where I was like, okay, you are fit-ish, but you're putting pressure on your body because you're carrying too much weight. And also, and again, I cut back on alcohol. I returned to it. So I went just nothing because that was really all that worked for me. And so you will go through phases. And one of my coaches told me this. He told me this 25, 30 years ago. He's like, you will go through phases. You have to give yourself grace, but you also have to always be coming back to what you know is right. And that's one thing I would encourage people on is that, nobody is an out of shape 8-year-old. Like you can't find, well, maybe someplace, but there's very few out of shape 8-year-olds. There might be out of shape 13, 14-year-olds, but there's a certain point in your life you were in shape. Okay, now what happened? What changed? It was your diet. It was your exercise. It was what you're doing. Whatever. Just return to that and keep returning to it.
No, definitely. That's very insightful. Thank you for that. And going back to the companies, I mean, if you had to start a company today in this post-pandemic, AI-driven, high interest rate market, I mean, what would you do differently? I mean, what's the belief about entrepreneurship that you see that's killing startups today?
Yeah, I think the first thing is patience. There's this idea that you have to be a unicorn and you have to get there overnight. Steve Jobs said it best. It's amazing how after 20 years you're an overnight success. I mean, there are a few unicorns that scale to this, to that in so much time. And we all like to measure that and like, this is the fastest ever. But the reality is so few scale quickly and so many take time. And so patience is one of the biggest things that I'd say. The second thing is I think you have to use a hybrid model. And what I mean by that is, there's this argument that do you do customer funded, meaning you build something people want and then they fund your growth, or you build something that you think is awesome and then you go raise money, and whether it's to angels or VCs or whatever. And I think it's both. I think that's one of the mistakes people are making. They think they should do one or the other, and I think that you should be doing both. That's what I'm doing personally in the startup I'm in right now. And what I'd say is that you need to be mindful of. I see a lot of people who spend all their time raising and no time selling to the customers, and vice versa. I see people trying to constantly sell, and it's like, well, you would know if you had a real product if you could raise money, if other people believed in you enough to give you money. So I think a hybrid approach is the best. And then I think the other thing in this AI, this environment, I would just be very careful. I said this to one of the people in my business that I sold in 2017. I said, you have a problem when you fall in love with our customers. And what I meant by that was he would see a new customer and he'd get all excited and think, this is it. They're going to be huge. And maybe they're going to be huge. They're going to bring in a lot of revenue for us. But you can't fall in love with them. You have to look at every opportunity as just that. It's an opportunity. We do what we can, then we move on to the next one. And you have to be fairly transactional. And that's, I guess, what I'd say in this post-pandemic AI world is be very transactional about things, because, it used to be 20 years ago, you could find something, if you were a great attorney and you built a great law firm, you're set. Today, you build a great law firm, I don't know. With AI, I don't know if you're going to be set. I don't, we say that it's all white collar jobs that are going to disappear soon. Yeah, we think that, but then again, Elon's got robots that could be taking blue-collar jobs 2 years from now, and no one's looking at that yet. So, everybody says, well, the best thing right now is to be a plumber because plumbers are always going to be needed. These robots you're seeing now, they might start displacing plumbers soon. So there's I don't know. So be very transactional about what you do. Everything's got to be profitable. Everything's got to work. You got to be ready to pivot because there will be opportunity. There is going to be crazy opportunity. But you have to be transactionally ready to pivot. Don't fall in love with anything. be ready to make changes and pivot. And I guess that's what I would tell people, but also just get going, because there is opportunity. In chaos is opportunity. You very seldom ever see opportunity when everything's stable. I've been in very stable economies. I'm 50 something years old. I've seen every economy you can see. And stable economies don't provide a lot of opportunity, because it's hard to break in to a competitive environment. Because people don't want to give up their business. They're gonna compete with you. But in chaos, things change quickly, and there's opportunity. So if I was an entrepreneur, and I am, and I'm starting a business, and that's what I'm doing. I'll just give you a quick example. Everybody's in AI right now. And most people are doing AI projects, right? They're trying to either build the next AI thing, or they're trying to do projects around it. And the business I'm starting right now is AI for CEOs, and it's focused on just CEOs. If you come to me and say, Wade, will you build me an AI for my call center? The engineers I have on staff, and we're funded and we're up and running, could do it for sure. I will not take your business, because my niche is AI for CEOs. And I know that, and my team knows that, and we've developed something for that. Now, we will pivot if we need to. I will do that, but I see an opportunity right there, right now. That's what we're doing. Now, in 6 months from now, that could pivot and change, but I'm going to stay watching for what are the ducks and weaves and things I need to do as I'm going through this. And maybe I sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, that I might be, but I think, again, Jim Collins said it, you have to hold two ideas in your head at one time in order to be successful in business. And so those are two separate concepts. You got to be able to stay niched, but be ready to pivot. And it's not easy to do, but that's what you have to do, because there's a lot of opportunity.
There is. And my question to you is, did you build before validating, or did you just go ahead and if something changes, then you're pivoting with the market like that, right? So on what,
Yeah,
yeah.
I validate as I build. I like to do micro validations as I go along. There are a lot of really smart people in this world who can dream up in really, really wild things and then go build them. That's not me. I can see opportunity and build to opportunity. That's the kind of entrepreneur I am. And I think there's different types of entrepreneurs, for sure. Very, very different entrepreneurs. And so, like, Uber is a great example. You could argue whether they saw it first or they saw it second. It doesn't really matter. They saw an opportunity, but then they built it and then validated it, right? Afterwards. And a lot of people believed in them and gave them money. And that's, if I had thought of Uber, it's not how I would have done it. Now I would have failed possibly, but I would have done it differently just because of who I am. So I like to do little micro validations as I build. And so, like, the solution we're doing right now, AI for CEOs, we spent 2 years doing little micro validations as we built it, selling it, building it, selling it. And we're still doing that. We just the other day, we had a feature release, and people are like, you should change these things. So, like, you know what? You're right. We should. So let's go do that. So I may not be answering your question exactly, but that's how I approach it. But I think I've done consulting. I still do consulting at times, although right now most of my time is being spent in this startup. But at times I still do consulting. I do board work and all that. And I tell people there's really, I believe, 3 types of businesses out there. Either you're a sales-driven business where you're going to grow organically because you're really good at acquiring clients and building it and showing value. You're either an execution company, which means you're really good at running a business. And so now you're going to go acquire other businesses because there's no reason for you to build it. If you're good at executing, go buy the businesses and run it better than them. And then there's what I'll call unicorn, and those are typically what we would see as the Ubers, where you're a brilliant person, you have a brilliant idea, you can develop that idea, and it will grow on its own. It doesn't need sales and it doesn't need execution because it's such a brilliant idea. It's a unicorn. There's very few of those. And the mistake that I see most companies falling into, and I've done consulting on this time and time again, is that they're either a sales, organic growth company, or they're an execution where they should be acquiring other companies. And both these people want to be a unicorn because they see that as a quick way to riches and a quick way to solve the problems. Well, if you were smart enough, it would be. But it's like only handful of people can play baseball at a professional level in America. Only a handful of people can play football at a professional level in the UK, right? The rest of the world football, right? There's only few people who can play at a certain level, and there's only a few unicorns. And most entrepreneurs fall into the 2 buckets I already talked about. They're very good at sales and organic growth, or they're very good at execution. Very seldom they're good at both. And they need to pick their lane and stop trying to come up with the next innovation. That's always we're going to innovate. We're going to find the next innovation. Well, you might, but you might have it right now. You might be really good at sales and marketing, or you might be really good at execution, and you might be able to out execute everybody else. Well, why don't you just go buy businesses from people who can't execute well or whatever, right? So I get pretty passionate about this subject, and I get pretty opinionated because there's just not many unicorns, just like there's not very many professional football players. There's just, and by the way, it only lasts for a certain amount of time. And if you look at, Elon and other people have talked about that, it's like that creative spark. It's just like sports. You only have it for a certain amount of time. So you have to figure that out as well. Anyway, so a little bit of philosophical there, but I definitely believe that. And I wrote about that as well in my book, Wake Up Call.
No, I really like that. And in a nutshell, what is your AI company for CEOs? What does it do?
So what we're doing and we're encouraging people to do is most organizations are letting IT run their AI projects. And IT is going to go out and try to automate portions of the business. And they should. That's wonderful. Go do that. Challenge is, I don't know how many times I've heard CEOs say, if I could just clone myself, I'd be better off. Well, for the first time in history, you can clone yourself and you can do it through AI, but you can't do it by using ChatGPT or Grok or any of that. You have to build a custom AI interface for yourself. And it's not hard to do. There's tons of off-the-shelf products like Langflow and others that will allow you to build a reg. And then you can build that reg if you know what you're doing, or have someone like our organization, Renegades, that can build that for you. And now you're up and running. And it can be hosted in Azure or AWS, wherever you want. It can be private. It can still use the LLMs out there like OpenAI, or it can use Gemini or whatever you want, or both. And a lot of times we use all of them at one time, part of our reg when we do a custom one. If you do that, now you have your bias, your thinking, your way of doing things, and it's a co-CEO with you as you're out there trying to run your business. And then if you get that developed, now you go down a layer, do the same thing for your HR manager, same thing for your marketing manager, same thing for your sales manager, same thing for your operations. And now all this intelligence is being kept inside your company. This is not that OpenAI or ChatGPT is bad or Gemini. They're all great and you can use them. They're just consumer products, and you wouldn't use like QuickBooks. QuickBooks is great in the US until you get to a certain size, and then you need to go to a better product to track your finances. You wouldn't use that, or you wouldn't use some simple product to track sales. You use Salesforce. Same thing here. As a CEO, you shouldn't just use ChatGPT to do your AI. You need something built for you. And so that's what we do. And it's a subscription model. And the way we do is like, look, we're not going to do this in 90 days, but in 90 days, we can get you up and running. You will be impressed. And then we'll just keep building and building and building. And so we've already built this for several CEOs, and we've got one who've been doing it for 3 years now. And his personal co-CEO that we built for him 3 years ago now is so mature and so well developed, it's getting predictive, where it can almost tell us what's coming in the future in his business because of how much work we put into it. And so that's the holy grail. And you can get there. You can absolutely get there. And then the final thing I'd say is that a lot of organizations, especially at the leadership level, the CEO level, are frustrated because their AI projects are stalled. Well, if you're waiting for that project to get done to then come help you be a better CEO or a better leadership person, that'll never happen. They'll never get to you. So keep doing those projects, but let Renegades come in and help your leadership team, help you as a CEO get up and running with AI. Let's do both in parallel. And you're going to have a lot of success. And so, some CEOs get it and some don't, and that's fine. It's like any other sales process. About 10% of CEOs get it. 10% who watch this will get it, and they'll probably go try to do it themselves because they're cheap. Most CEOs are. But, there's a few who go, I don't want to do that. I'll call Wade at Renegades and let them do that. And those are the people we're looking for.
That's great. And is it more of something that can take care of emails, or is it purely for decisions or forecasting?
Yep, exactly. It's more this is a decision-making engine, right? So there's a lot of human effort that goes into it because your business has been successful because you are unique. If I took a generic approach to business, I wouldn't get to where you got to. You did something different. Could have been right, could have been wrong, could have been a mixture of both, but you did something different to get to where you're at. Okay, let's capture that. Let's test that. Let's model that. Let's help you refine that like we did with this one CEO I'm talking about. And then over time, you will start finding the bias that works. You'll start finding the right things that work in your business. And as you do that, you'll make much better decisions much quicker. You'll make them, not the AI, but the AI will be your co-CEO. It will help you with this. So this is all around strategy and execution, modeling things out, looking at data. No, it's not answering email or that. You find plenty of solutions to do that. They're off the shelf. No, we want to be this is about if we could duplicate your thinking, your decision making, your data analyst. And the other thing is early on in businesses, owners and CEOs, everybody for that matter, all leadership positions love to look at their job, love to analyze things, and they make great decisions because the human AI, what's up here, what's in your head, can look at it and make great decisions. And what we love about AI is it can duplicate some of that if configured correctly. Well, what happens is humans get bored and they get lazy. Always. It never doesn't happen. Double negative there, but it never doesn't happen. Humans always get bored. They always get lazy. And that goes for CEOs. So eventually you stop looking at those reports, or you stop analyzing this, or you take time to do this or that. You're not putting the effort into the business that you did early on. Well, AI never gets tired and it never gets bored. So if you take the time, and it does take time, but if you take the time now to start building this model of yourself, and then start feeding you the things that you would typically do, analyzing different things, looking at different things, all of a sudden now, you as CEO who never gets bored, never gets tired, is always running, and by the way, runs 1,000 million, whatever it is, times faster than you. And that's what we're building. And you have to make the investment and you have to believe it's possible, which it all is when you show it. But if you do, it's incredible. But yeah, no, we're not trying to answer emails or set calendars or make phone calls for you or anything. No, that's all our people are doing that. We're trying to figure out how do we duplicate you in that decision making and analysis. And it's pretty incredible if you can get it right. But it's very bespoke, it's very custom, and it's not something we can build once and then just everybody can use it. There's a portion of it we built that is repeatable for sure, because there's components that every CEO can use, but then there's components that have to be configured for your independent case study.
No, that's amazing. So you're basically running an independent instance on a server of that CEO,
exactly,
right? With its own data.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it.
And processing at the same time, which I'm assuming, because you come from a cybersecurity background, everything is separated. All the data within it is protected, and so on and so forth. So
it's actually anybody who wants to know the mechanics of it. I'll just tell you real quickly as we're wrapping up here. The mechanics of it are quite simple because you can still use the large language models that are out there, the LLMs like OpenAI and Gemini and Claude and all those. You can still use those using our model. It's just all your data, all your things are configured about you sit in either an AWS server or an Azure server, totally secure. Only you have access to it. It's your own instance. We're not sharing instances of other CEOs because it's not that expensive. It's pretty inexpensive to build you your own Azure server. Now, if you use it a lot, it could get expensive, but it's not that expensive to configure and set it up. It scales quite nicely. And so you just copy paste, set up the new CEO. And yeah, it's all very secure and it's not mixing data. Now, of course, you want to use the commercially available LLMs because their processing power is unbelievable on their logic power, but all the configuration is specific and secure to you. And we even have your own interface. You can toggle things on and off. So like, for instance, one fun thing we do is like, if you know the show Billions, most people watch this podcast, probably watch Billions. You got Axel, right? He's got this crazy idea of the world and the way things should be. No one should run a business the way Axel would. He's a character in a TV show. But for fun, you can, in our thing, toggle on, I want Axel to give me advice. I want Axel to be my co-CEO. And then it'll start acting like Axel or whoever you want to pick. You want Jack Welch? Who do you want? And so we can do those kind of things. So it can be both productive and entertaining at the same time.
No, that's brilliant. And it's fun as well to use. And what's the name of the product?
We're calling the company Renegades. And so it's really not a product. It's just a company that does the subscription service for CEOs.
Perfect.
And I got to say one last thing for people. Never give up on naming your company. Because I like to do things based on red. I'm not wearing it today, but I do a lot of my companies that have red in their name or red someplace in them. And we were brainstorming and we were like, well, we're kind of like renegades. We're crazy. We do things differently here at my company. And we went and looked, is Renegades just one letter different, R-E-D instead of R-E-N? Is that available? It was. It blew my mind. It's like, how did someone not buy this yet? That's bonkers. So sometimes it's really hard to find a company name, but don't give up, because I got to tell you, I'm very happy with that one. And well, the crazy thing is there was Renegade. Look, we got every spelling you could imagine. I was like, this is just crazy. So never give up on the naming of your company. There's still names available out there even today.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool name, and sometimes that's the biggest challenge, right? And once you hit it on the head,
Yes.
it's actually an accomplishment. So well done there. I want
Thank you.
to take you back to the consulting side. I mean, let's say I'm running a messy $5 to $10 million business, decent revenue, but chaos is everywhere. What's your first 90-day playbook to get me back on track?
Oh, people. I mean, it's all people. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm coming in doing consulting, I mean, strategy is a second thing, and it's important. Like, I got to know what your strategy is, but it's all people. You're the right, Jim Collins said it best. You're the right people on the bus, and then the right seats. And it's the one problem we never fix as business owners and entrepreneurs. And as a consultant, it's so easy to come in and be like, oh, yep, right there, right there, right there. And a lot of times you need an outsider to come in and show you that. And then once we're done with that, then we're going to look at strategy and say, okay, do you have the right strategy? And a lot of times you think you do, but you don't. You just don't. You don't have a good strategy. And the place most people start with, which is execution. We got to get lean. We got to run better. It's like, that's like the last thing you got to do. Like, yeah, sure, you got to do all that, but it's like you can run a bad process really well. It's still a bad process. You can go talk to your bad people about being more lean and doing better execution and having better culture and buying in more, and they're still bad people. And so, I mean, it's just people first. You can call it culture if you want, but let's not kid ourselves. We're talking people. And that's the other thing to do. It's culture first. Yeah, it's culture first because you have bad people. Let's get rid of the bad people, or let's change them out. Or sometimes they're on the wrong seat. They're the right people, the wrong seat in the bus. And let's get that. So we have I've shared this openly. So if anybody wants, you can get it from. We have a matrix. We do a 4-box. We say these people up here are terrorists. These people down here are bunnies. If you're a terrorist, you're destroying the company. If you're a bunny, you're not working very hard. You're in the wrong job. These are the A players. Down here are the rats. And people don't like that terminology, but it is what it is. You label your people, and then you focus on getting rid of the rats first, terrorists second, and bunnies third. And then A players, obviously, you keep. And then you just keep rinsing and repeating until you get it right.
And you've got a wake-up call framework, right? Clarity, accountability, execution.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I mean, you're giving it probably more credibility than what it really has. It's a loose framework, but yes, we have an absolute framework that we take people through. It's very loose though.
Yeah.
So it's not as structured. But
you touched upon it. It was the clarity and the vision and the roles, the accountability, who owns what is where you touched with the seats, and execution is the operating rhythm that you're moving at. So no, that's...
Yeah, and I borrow from a lot of people. My main mentor was Vert Harnish. He wrote the book Scaling Up. So I borrow a lot from him and give him credit. He endorsed my book. I just saw him the other day. He sold over 500,000 copies of that book. But also the person I borrow a lot from is Jim Collins. And the book that I tell everybody is a must-read as an entrepreneur is Beyond Entrepreneurship. It's literally in the title of the book. If you're an entrepreneur and you haven't read that, I mean, that has sold millions of copies. It is the Bible on entrepreneurship, in my opinion. So I borrow from those guys, and I tossed in some of my own experiences and things I learned from Wake Up Call, and that's my consulting or my board work, depending on how I engage with people. But then at the end of the day, all the knowledge is out there. You don't need to get it from me. And then you just have to, like we're trying to do with AI, apply your own bias or your own thinking on it, as long as it's not wrong thinking. But if you don't make it unique to you, then you're not differentiating. You're not different in some way. So that's why Jim Collins tells you have to have your own core values. You have to have your own purpose. You have to have a mission. You have to have a BHAG. Those are unique to you and your business. And that's what your differentiators and drives you. And so, all those things have to be in place. But when there's a company you describe in mass chaos, it's people first and then strategy second.
No, that is great. And you've coached many companies, over 100 companies, including some doing 9 figures. What separates the ones who scale sustainably from the ones who quit, and quietly implode? I mean, what do great CEOs obsess over that early stage founders overlook and totally miss?
Probably the first is they don't obsess. I know a lot of the business, as you're asking a question, I was thinking, what can I say? And the people who don't scale, they only make, say, 10 million in revenue, and they can't understand why they didn't go any further, and they don't make it to 100. A lot of times it's because they obsessed over things and they didn't take a balanced approach to dealing with all these things. They get hung up on one thing. We're not lean enough. We don't have good enough financials. We're not selling enough, whatever. And the people making from 10 million to 100 million in revenue typically are not obsessed. The people who make it to 100 really realize that there's this flywheel effect that Jim Collins talks about, where at 100 million, if you figure out your flywheel the way Amazon did and some other companies, and then you just keep turning that, you will get to $1 billion. And the biggest mistake everybody makes pre-$1 billion of revenue, and I've coached up and beyond. I mean, there's a company I'm working with that's beyond $1 billion right now. The big mistake most people make before $1 billion of revenue is they try to pivot into something different too early. Even at $100 million of revenue, and you may only be seeing $1 million, like, I can't believe we're saying this, but I'm telling you, $1 million of revenue, you're like, I got to find the next thing. No, you don't. Whatever you have right now, you can take to 100 million and probably beyond, believe it or not. Now, maybe make small changes, add small product lines. I'm not saying don't make any changes, but too many people want to go from making medical devices to now I'm going to make EV vehicles. It's like, no, stay in medical devices. That's what you're good at. Get that to $1 billion. Then you maybe earn the right to go over here and do this EV thing that somehow your medical devices play into. I don't know how, but maybe it does. But too often, entrepreneurs who get to 10 million or 100 million, they see this shiny object and they chase it at the detriment of this cash cow they have over here where they just turn that flywheel. So those $100 million companies understand that it's about consistently turning the flywheel, which is what gets them to $1 billion. And the final thing I'll say about that, the biggest mistake, and this is the guy who brought Uggs from Australia to the US, wrote a book, and he's on a speaking circuit, and I heard him speak, and what he said was so true. If you hear anything, you have to hear this. If you're sitting at 1 million or 10 million and you have a dream to get to $1 billion, there are 1 million other entrepreneurs just like you at 1 million or 10 million who have the same exact dream, and only a few are going to make it there. And the difference maker between being 10 or 100 million or 1 million and making it to $1 billion is what the inventor of Ugg said. You have to have some change in society. And just give me a minute here. This is really critical. People understand this. He talked about how he was stuck at 100 million for years and years and years. And Uggs was a huge brand in the US. 100 million is a good amount of money, but he couldn't break 100 million. And then all of a sudden, one day, Oprah goes, "This is my finer things of the year at Christmas." And he went from 100 million to $1 billion. That was his societal change. Now, he got lucky with Oprah, but that was his societal change. Something in society has to happen for you to get to $1 billion for a lot of reasons, but the major reason is this. And you're not going to want to hear this, and you may not accept this, but this is the truth. This is not my opinion. This is the way the world works. When you hit $100 million of revenue, let's say you're at 10 million, you got this dream to get to $1 billion. I'm telling you, when you hit $100 million of revenue, what happens is you show up on radar. And private equity starts seeing you, and other companies start seeing you. There's just no way you can hide that much revenue. You just start showing up. And what happens is people start going, if that joker can get to $100 million of that product, we could probably do the same thing. And they cannibalize your business. So the only way to get to $1 billion is you somehow have to have some unique societal thing. You're the only person that can do this. You have a patent. You have something. Something happens, sometimes in your control. In the Uggs example, he had no control of that. He worked hard for a lot of years and got Oprah to recognize him. But sometimes it's in your control. You get a patent. Sometimes you dream up something new. But if you think you're just going to do it hard, doesn't work that way. Most people cap out at 100 million because it's not just, do you have the capabilities? It's, is the world going to leave you alone enough to get there? Because too many people will say, if he can do it, I can do it, and come cannibalized. Literally, I've seen this happen to friends' businesses. They get to 100 million and some private equity goes, let's take $10 million, go hire a bunch of people, and we can get to 100 million just like they did. And before they know it, they got this really substantial, really well-funded business competing with them. They're like, what the hell happened? You showed up, you got too big, and people found out about you. So, that's one of the biggest things I tell people is go for it. Don't not have a dream. You talked about Tony Robbins, and you should, I believe in all that. Have a dream and go for it. I have a dream. I'm going for it. But I'm also accepting reality. To get to that number, you really want to get there. It's not just as easy as saying it. It's not just as easy as doing it. You have to have something that happens, a spark of some type. And a lot of people can go their whole life trying to get it and never get it. And that's not their fault. It's not luck. It is hard work. It is innovation. It's all those things. But you can work your ass off and never get that spark. But if you don't look for the spark, you'll never get it. So that's why I say this to people: make sure you know that you gotta find something, or you'll never get there. And that this might be like, of course, Wade, we already knew that. You might know it, but you don't think about it. So always have that in mind. Now, I don't want to get to $1 billion. That doesn't drive me. But I know a lot of entrepreneurs, for whatever reason, they get that in their head. Well, go for it, but know you're going to need that.
What you talk about luck, right? In terms of creating your own luck. And if you're not working hard, you're not creating your own luck, right? And
Correct.
You're not going to benefit from that thing in society that's supposed to change, or that spark. And, people say you need a bit of luck, but right, you said it. You work hard, you make your own luck. And sure, there's a little bit of randomness involved, right time, right place. But if you're constantly going at it and you're going in the right direction, you're most likely going to be open to see that opportunity when others don't. Right? And so you work with very high value talent, right? CEOs of multinational companies. I mean, what do you teach clients that the public never hears?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I teach anything the public doesn't hear. I might teach things they don't listen for or listen to. I might remind them of certain things. I'm having a hard time thinking of something specific other than what you just said. You have to realize that and I'm just going to repeat what you said, but if you work hard and you watch for it and you're open to it, luck will show up. And Jim Collins already wrote about this, right? He talks about return on luck. And he talks about how the best companies are the great, as he describes them, great, good to great. That was one of his books. The great companies get return on luck, but they only get return on luck because they showed up. And they showed up over and over again. That's why he always comes back to his flywheel concept, which I'm stealing from him or borrowing. That the idea you develop your flywheel and you just keep turning that, because then you get the return on luck. And I think that's what you were describing. Is what Jim Collins has written about extensively. He said it better than I can. I would go there. And I would say my most successful companies, like the one that's got one right now that's at 500 million that I've been working with since they were 30 million. They started at 30 million with me and they're at 500 million. They'll be at 600 million next year, no problem. They'll be at $1 billion a couple of years from now. They did exactly that. From day one, they heard this from me. I shared this with them, the idea of flywheel concept Jim Collins talked about in 2001, and they went after it. And I think there's an important way to end this concept. We keep going on the podcast, but this concept is that this idea of flywheel it's not just something academic that Jim Collins came up with. You can go look at the research. Jeff Bezos read Good to Great, went and visited Jim Collins in Boulder, Colorado, where he has his lab, I think it was 2001, and believed in this concept and built his flywheel. And the original flywheel was posted out there. Jim Collins has published it many, many times, and Amazon still follows that flywheel. And they were not a big company back then. Yeah, they had a big opportunity and they were scaling fast, but they were not a big company. A lot of people laughed at the different things that they did, but they followed that flywheel over and over again, and they got return on luck over and over and over again. So again, luck shows up for everybody, and probably everybody gets just as lucky. Jim Collins talks about this. It's just a matter of, are you ready to capture that luck? So that's what I'd say. And that's I'd say, what do I teach CEOs, to your original question? Bottom line, talked about it already in this podcast. Flywheel, flywheel, flywheel. What's your flywheel? Now, again, there's what's your differentiators and 1,000 other things we talk about. Those are all important too. But that flywheel is just so, if you're creating a business that's sustainable and you want to scale, and you don't know your flywheel is, you don't have a business that's going to scale or is sustainable. If you have one, you may, but then now it's a matter of, is it a good one and can you turn it over and over and over again?
And Wade, you're a man of God. And how was that played in your life? Your faith.
I would say I'm a spiritual person. I have shifted in and out of spirituality and how much I adhere to different spiritual systems. I was raised in a very conservative evangelical Christian home. I don't shy away from talking about that. So a lot of my worldview is based on that. Here in the U.S., we have, they call these people Trumpsters, or evangelicals or whatever. And that was definitely my background and where I was raised is still part of my worldview. You can't erase that from your head. I would say I'm now more open to spirituality in general. I don't believe that we showed up here by accident. Something has to be out there, in my opinion. For my friends who are atheists and don't believe in a God, they would say that's crazy. And that's fine. That's their worldview. But, I definitely believe there has to be something more. I'm careful now to say I know exactly what it is. And I'm careful to say there's only one thing. I don't know. I know what I believe and I know what works for me. And, you've seen, if you watch podcasts, if you're watching this, there's a very good chance you watch Joe Rogan and some other podcasters. And there's a movement right now in the space of people are thinking deeply about stuff like this and aren't just listening to music and aren't just watching TV, but are trying to educate themselves and trying to listen to podcasts and read books and trying to further themselves. There's a movement in this space right now of, hey, this spiritual thing is real. Again, back to Joe Rogan, you've seen him show up in church in Texas as of late. And so there's, he even says in his podcast, he doesn't know what it is, but he knows there's some value in it. And you've seen actors get more out, they're more out front with the fact that they're spiritual. Some will say they're Christian or they're Muslim or they're whatever. So that's where I put myself in the spiritual realm. I want what's best for everybody. I strive every day to be a more charitable person. I got that from Joe Rogan, stealing that or borrowing that from him. But I work really hard not to be harsh. It's easy as an entrepreneur to be a harsh person. I would encourage everybody who watches this podcast, if you're an entrepreneur, you have been conditioned to be harsh. And yeah, in business at times you have to be, there's no doubt about that. But in life, you don't have to be. And then I would say that the other thing I've learned in life is I met a lot of people who have a lot of money and they're not any happier than me. So if you are, and they're not any happier than I was with no money, and they're not any happier than I am with money. Happiness really does come from the relationships you build, both with whatever God you believe in and with the people that are around you. And I'm not going to claim to always get that right. There's some people around me who may watch this podcast and say, yeah, Wade's definitely messed that up. And I have, but I'm striving to get that right as much as I can. And I'm admitting my mistakes in the past and I'm moving forward to try to do a better job. And so to me, that's the big thing. It sounds woo-woo and, and old new agey, but it's all true and it's all real. And so do that in your own life and try to love other people. And so, in America and in most of the world, Christianity is big, right? So we have Jesus at the center of that. And if you really just go look at Jesus said and try to do what he said, not what people said he said, but go read the writings, and follow that, I think you're gonna do pretty well in life because you're gonna be a pretty good person. Yeah, that's kind of where I land.
No, definitely. It's very honorable. I mean, whether people think it's right or wrong, it's your experience and you're looking at it from a positive lens. So that's commendable, right?
Thank you.
And that's not for people to judge. If you were to give a final 30-second speech to the world, what would it be?
Go for it. Whatever that is, I don't know for you, but whatever it is, go for it. I think that's the biggest thing that I grieve for people is they just didn't go for it. And that is one of the chapters in my book. Is there have been times when I wish I would have gone for it more. I would have not necessarily risked more. I would have gone for it. And too many people get in their own head and they don't go for it, including me. And you very seldom ever are disappointed if you don't go for it. I think the last 5 seconds, I'll just say that the saying mantra I have around that, it's not my mantra for life, but it's a mantra I have that I say to myself often is it's no if I don't ask. If I don't ask, it's already no. So why not ask? And if you're afraid of no, you got to get over that and go for it. Everything in life gets better when you go for it.
There's a regret that's really powerful. When you watch these videos on YouTube with the old people, in their 80s and 90s, it's regret. They regret not going harder. They regret not actually doing what they were supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that feeling is worse than not doing it because you have to die with that. You have to take that to the grave, right?
And for sure, and I think that's a great thing to highlight is that's one component, but very seldom is it ever about business. Still go for it in business. I think you'll have a lot of fulfillment and you'll be happy and it also fuels the rest of your life. So go for it in business. But remember those people around you right now, whoever you live with right now, whoever you visit at holidays, where it's Christmas or whatever you celebrate, those people, whoever you go see the football game with, those people around you, when you're 80 or 90, that's where you'll have most of your regret. You won't have much regret about business. I don't have much regret about business, and I'm only in my 50s. A little bit, but not a lot. Any regret I have is around those people. And so keep that in mind as well, right? That's a really critical component of going for it.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, thank you very much, Wade. This was a really powerful podcast. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
I appreciate all the knowledge that you've given, and this is definitely one of many to come.
Thank you. Much success to everybody, and I want what's best for everybody, so go for it.